Ladies and gentlemen, high achievers and future titans of engineering today, I want to challenge you. I want to ask, what if, starting right now, you could become not just a better engineer, but the kind of leader others look to, follow, and remember? What if in the next few years, your name becomes synonymous with innovation, with trust, with results? Imagine walking into any room, client meeting, boardroom, startup pitch, and people believe in you because you see things others don't. You chart paths where others see chaos. You build teams where others see friction. That power is not reserved for a lucky few. It's earned by those who choose to lead, not just work. When it comes to leadership, the first thing that separates the average from the extraordinary is vision. Not a task list, not a roadmap, not another project timeline, but vision. The ability to look at the chaos around you and see the bigger picture. Too many engineers, and honestly too many leaders, spend their time buried in the weeds, fixing bugs, pushing features, responding to tickets. That might keep you busy, but it doesn't make you a leader. Vision is what elevates you. Strategy is what sustains you, and together they make the foundation of greatness. Vision means asking yourself a question that few are bold enough to confront. Where are we going, and why does it matter? It's not about building something cool for the sake of it. It's about impact. How does this product, this platform, this piece of infrastructure change the way people live, work, or connect? Leaders don't just deliver, they inspire. They stand in front of a team and say, "This is the mountain we're climbing. Here's why the climb is worth it." That clarity is contagious. Without vision, your team feels like a group of contractors filling tasks. With vision, they feel like builders of something legendary. But vision alone is just a dream if it isn't backed by strategy. Strategy is where leadership gets tested. Anyone can talk about the future, but only a true leader can design a path to get there. Strategy is the bridge between imagination and execution. It's not a rigid plan carved in stone, it's a living framework. It's knowing what to prioritize, what to cut, and what to push forward. It's understanding trade-offs and making decisions when the data is incomplete and the stakes are high. A great engineering leader doesn't get lost in perfection. They set a direction, take action, and refine along the way. The power of vision and strategy shows up in alignment. People don't follow titles, they follow clarity. When your vision is clear, when your strategy is coherent, suddenly your team stops second guessing. They stop hesitating. They move with speed and conviction because they know where they're going. That alignment compounds. Deadlines are hit faster, collaboration improves, and innovation emerges because people aren't lost in confusion. They're energized by purpose. Here's the truth most won't admit. Strategy is about saying no more than saying yes. A leader without vision says yes to everything, and in doing so, the team burns out. A leader with vision knows what matters most. They have the courage to focus. Focus is power. It doesn't mean ignoring opportunities. It means pursuing the right ones. And when people see that discipline, they trust you. They trust your calls because they know you're not just chasing noise. You're steering towards something real. Being a visionary isn't about predicting the future with certainty. It's about sensing possibilities before they're obvious. It's seeing a trend, a shift, an opening in the market and saying, if we move now, if we align our resources, we can lead. Vision requires courage because it means choosing a path before the evidence is overwhelming. If the evidence was overwhelming, it wouldn't be vision. It would just be hindsight. That's why true leaders stand out. They're willing to bet on conviction, not comfort. And let me make this clear, vision is not about you alone. It's not about how smart you are or how much you can anticipate. A real leader listens. They listen to the quiet voices in the room, the engineers who see details you miss, the customers who reveal pain points you overlooked, the signals in the industry that whisper before they roar. Vision isn't born in isolation. It's sharpened through perspective. The smartest leaders are not just dreamers, they are listeners who refine their vision by absorbing and connecting insights others ignore. Once you have vision, once you've designed strategy, the hardest part begins communication. You cannot lead if you cannot articulate. Vision trapped in your mind is useless. Strategy buried in a slide deck is wasted. You have to repeat it over and over until it becomes part of your team's DNA. Don't underestimate repetition. Leaders get bored saying it long before the team gets bored hearing it, and yet that repetition is what cements belief. People don't just need direction once, they need to feel it constantly. Here's the uncomfortable reality: without vision and strategy, you'll always be replaceable. You'll always be another manager in the system, another engineer lost in execution. But with vision, you step into rare territory. People don't just respect you, they remember you. They associate you with clarity, with courage, with direction. That's when your influence outlives your presence. Even if you leave a company, the vision you set continues to guide them. That's legacy. So ask yourself, what's my vision? Not just for this sprint or this project, but for the next 5 years. What am I building that actually matters? And do I have the strategy to get us there? If the answer isn't crystal clear, you've found your work. Because the moment you gain clarity, the moment you align vision with strategy, you transform from someone managing tasks into someone shaping futures. That's not leadership in theory, that's leadership in action. The best engineering leaders in the world are not the ones with the sharpest technical edge or the most impressive resumes. They are the ones who dared to see farther, dared to focus deeper, and dared to bring people along on a journey that mattered. That's the standard, that's the challenge, and if you embrace it, you don't just lead, you redefine what leadership looks like in your field. The moment you step into real leadership, you realize something powerful. It's not about you anymore, it's about your team, your success, your growth, even your reputation. It all scales with the people you lead. Too many leaders fall into the trap of control. They believe leadership means giving orders, micromanaging every detail, and making sure nothing goes wrong. That is not leadership. That's fear disguised as authority. The truth is simple. If you want to be the best leader in your field, you have to learn to empower your people and trust them to deliver. Think about this. The most talented engineers don't want someone hovering over their shoulder. They don't want every line of their code questioned or every design decision second guessed. What they want is trust. They want the freedom to solve problems their way. They want the space to experiment, to push boundaries, to learn through iteration. When you empower them, when you show them that you believe in their ability, you unlock a level of creativity and ownership you could never buy with a paycheck. Trust is not blind. It's not about turning away and hoping everything works out. Trust is built by alignment. You set the vision, you clarify the outcomes, and then you give your team the freedom to figure out the how. The worst thing you can do as a leader is hand people responsibility and then strip them of the autonomy to act on it. That kills motivation. People don't rise when they're constrained, they rise when they're trusted. Here's the paradox: when you hold on too tightly, you lose control. The team becomes passive. They wait for you to make every decision. They stop taking initiative because they know you'll override them anyway. Before you know it, you've created a bottleneck, and the growth of the entire team is capped by your ability to micromanage. That's not scalable, that's not leadership. Empowerment, on the other hand, multiplies your influence. When you trust others to lead in their space, you suddenly have 10 times the capacity, 100 times the creativity, and 1,000 times the resilience. Real empowerment means giving your people not just the authority to make decisions, but also the safety to fail. Because let's be honest, mistakes will happen. Bugs will ship, systems will crash, deadlines will slip. If you punish every failure, you create a culture of fear. Fearful teams hide problems, they play it safe, they avoid risk, and in engineering, where innovation is everything, playing it safe is death. Instead, you create a culture where failure is seen as data, not disaster. You ask, what did we learn? How do we adjust? What's next? That shift alone can transform the energy of a team. Empowering your team also means being intentional about who you bring in. Hire people not just for their skills, but for their hunger, their curiosity, their willingness to grow. Skills can be taught, hunger cannot. When you surround yourself with people who are driven, your job becomes easier. Trusting them becomes natural because you know they'll rise to the occasion. And when they see that you trust them, they don't just work for you, they work with you. The best leaders are not the loudest voices in the room. They're the ones who ask the most powerful questions. What do you think? How would you solve this? What do you need for me to succeed? When you ask those questions, you're signaling respect. You're showing that their perspective matters, that they're not just executors but partners. And when people feel like partners, they stop clocking in for a paycheck and start showing up for the mission. Let me tell you something you won't hear often. Empowerment is harder than control. It takes more discipline to step back than to step in. It takes courage to let go of the steering wheel and trust that the people you've chosen will drive well. But that courage is the difference between a good leader and a great one. A good leader makes sure the job gets done. A great leader builds people who can get the job done without them. That's how you scale. That's how you become irreplaceable. Think of the leaders you admire most. It's never the ones who had all the answers themselves. It's the ones who created teams that could thrive long after they were gone. That's legacy, and legacy is built on trust. So how do you know if you're really empowering your team? Simple. Look at how often they come to you for permission versus how often they come to you with solutions. If they're constantly waiting for your green light, you're still holding the reins too tightly. But if they're bringing you new ideas, if they're making decisions and owning the outcomes, if they're pushing the mission forward without your constant input, then you've built something powerful. That's the sign of true leadership. Here's the call to action. Stop thinking of yourself as the hero. Start thinking of yourself as the builder of heroes. The measure of your leadership is not how impressive you are, but how impressive your people become because of you. The more you empower, the more they rise. The more you trust, the more they deliver. And when your team wins, you win bigger than you ever could alone. That is the essence of great leadership, not control. Not ego, empowerment, trust. If you master that, you won't just lead. You'll create leaders who can carry the vision farther than you ever imagined. That's how you build something that lasts. That's how you leave a mark. If there's one truth about leadership in engineering, it's this. The moment you stop learning, you stop leading. The landscape changes too fast. New frameworks, new tools, new architectures. What was best practice 2 years ago might be obsolete today. Too many leaders climb the ladder, step into management, and then slowly disconnect from the craft that made them valuable in the first place. That's a mistake, because leadership without technical credibility is fragile. People may respect your title, but they won't truly follow you if they can't trust that you understand the complexity of the work they're doing. Relentless learning is not an option, it's survival. It's what separates leaders who stay relevant from those who fade into irrelevance. Think about it. Would you respect a captain who doesn't know how the ship works? Would you trust a pilot who hasn't studied the latest navigation systems? Leadership in engineering is no different. You don't have to write code every day, but you do have to stay sharp. You do have to understand the trade-offs, the risks, the breakthroughs. Because when decisions need to be made, when the team hits a wall, they're going to look to you. And if you can't add clarity in those moments, your influence collapses. Learning as a leader is not just about picking up new technical skills. It's about cultivating curiosity as a way of life, reading research papers, experimenting with tools you don't yet need, following trends in AI, in distributed systems, in cybersecurity, not because you're going to use them tomorrow, but because you want to train your mind to see what's coming. The best leaders don't just react to change, they anticipate it. And you can't anticipate what you don't understand. But let's be real, time is scarce. You're running meetings, aligning strategy, managing people. How do you balance leadership with learning? The answer is rhythm. You carve out sacred blocks of time every week for growth. Even if it's just an hour, you protect it. You treat learning like a meeting with the future version of yourself, and you don't cancel on that meeting. Maybe you read code reviews not just to approve but to learn. Maybe you pick a small side project where you can test a new framework. Maybe you join architecture discussions not just to direct but to deepen your understanding. Learning doesn't have to mean formal training. It just means never letting the flame go out. Technical credibility is not about knowing everything. No one does. It's about knowing enough to ask the right questions. It's about understanding why one design decision might scale while another won't. It's about being able to step into a debate between two senior engineers and actually grasp the implications instead of nodding blindly. When your team sees that you get it, even at a high level, their respect grows. They know you're not just leading from a spreadsheet, you're leading from knowledge. Here's something people rarely admit. Technical credibility also protects culture. Because engineers are quick to sense when leadership doesn't understand the reality of the work, that's when frustration builds. That's when teams feel unheard, when deadlines get imposed without context, when shortcuts get demanded without grasping the cost. But if you're credible, you bridge the gap. You can translate the business goals into technical reality, and the technical constraints back into business language. You become the trusted voice between two worlds. Relentless learning also sets an example. Your team is watching you. If they see you constantly sharpening your skills, reading, asking questions, experimenting, they'll follow suit. You don't just tell them to keep learning, you model it. And when learning becomes contagious, your team becomes unstoppable. They adapt faster than competitors. They innovate more freely. They're not afraid of change because curiosity is already their default. The danger of ignoring this is real. Leaders who coast, who stop learning, slowly lose the trust of their teams. At first, it's subtle. A hesitation in technical discussions, a missed nuance in a design review. Then it becomes obvious. The team starts making decisions without involving you because they know you won't add value. Over time, your leadership becomes symbolic instead of substantial. And when that happens, it's only a matter of time before you're replaced by someone hungrier, sharper, more credible. The opportunity is just as real. If you commit to relentless learning, you build a reputation as someone who evolves with the field. You're not the leader who peaked 5 years ago. You're the leader who's still growing, still adapting, still curious. That's magnetic. People want to follow someone who hasn't settled. They want to know their leader is walking the same path of growth they're being asked to walk. So here's the challenge: never let a week pass without learning something new. It could be technical, it could be leadership related, it could be industry trends. Keep a notebook, keep a log, keep track of your evolution. Treat learning not as an afterthought, but as a core responsibility of leadership. Because the truth is, the best leaders are not the ones who know it all. They're the ones who keep learning when others stop. In the end, relentless learning and technical credibility are not about showing off your intelligence. They're about staying relevant, staying respected, and staying effective. They're about earning the trust of your team not because of your title, but because of your wisdom. And wisdom doesn't come from what you learned years ago. It comes from what you're still learning today. If you embrace that, you'll never fall behind. You'll always be one step ahead. guiding your team not from memory, but from momentum. Leadership without communication is an illusion. You can have the sharpest vision, the most brilliant strategy, and the deepest technical knowledge, but if you cannot communicate it in a way that inspires, aligns, and moves people, it dies in your head. Influence is the currency of leadership, and communication is how you earn it. Too many leaders think influence comes from authority, from having the title or being the smartest in the room. It doesn't. Influence comes from clarity, from trust, and from the ability to make others feel that they are part of something bigger than themselves. The greatest leaders are master translators. They can take complex technical realities and explain them in language a non-technical executive can understand. They can take high-level business goals and distill them into engineering priorities that energize the team. They're not dumbing things down, they're making them powerful, because true communication is about connection, not complexity. If the person listening doesn't walk away with clarity, it doesn't matter how brilliant your explanation was. Communication is not about talking more. It's about saying the right things at the right time with the right impact. There's a reason some people can walk into a room, speak for 2 minutes, and shift the entire energy of the group. It's not because they spoke louder or longer. It's because they were precise. They knew what mattered, they cut through the noise, and they delivered it in a way that resonated. As a leader, your words can either drain energy or spark action. Every sentence is a choice. Influence starts with listening. Most leaders fail here. They're so eager to direct, to share their perspective, to make their point, that they forget to actually hear. Listening is not waiting for your turn to talk, it's absorbing. It's watching what isn't being said. It's reading the hesitation in someone's voice or the silence in the room. The quietest person in your team often holds the sharpest insight. If you don't create space for those voices, you'll miss opportunities and blind spots that could have changed everything. People follow leaders who make them feel seen. That's where influence is born. When you take the time to understand someone's challenges, when you acknowledge their contribution, when you recognize their effort, you're not just motivating, you're building loyalty, and loyalty is what carries teams through setbacks and crises. You cannot fake this. People know when you're listening to reply versus when you're listening to understand. Authenticity is everything. Clarity is another non-negotiable. As a leader, you must repeat the vision, the priorities, the goals until they become second nature to your team. You'll get bored of saying it long before they get bored of hearing it. But repetition builds belief. Consistency builds trust. If your message changes every week, if your priorities shift constantly without explanation, you lose credibility. But if you stay clear, stay steady, and stay aligned, your influence compounds over time. Communication is not only downward, from leader to team, it's also upward and outward. You have to communicate with stakeholders, executives, and clients. You need to defend your team, explain their value, and make sure the people holding the budget understand the importance of the work. If you can't translate the complexity of engineering into the language of outcomes, cost savings, growth, reliability, then your team becomes invisible. Influence is about advocating for your people, making sure their work is recognized, and building bridges across silos. There's also a deeper level of influence that most leaders never reach, the ability to inspire belief. This is not about manipulation or hype. It's about speaking with such conviction, such authenticity, that people align not because they have to, but because they want to. When you communicate with real passion, when your words are backed by genuine belief, you ignite something in others. That's why some leaders can rally teams in moments of crisis, while others crumble. Influence is less about eloquence and more about conviction. But influence also demands responsibility. Every word you speak carries weight. A careless comment can demotivate someone for weeks. A rushed message can create confusion that derails a project. A moment of silence when encouragement was needed can crush morale. You don't get the luxury of casual communication when you're leading. Your words matter more than you realize, and great leaders use them with intention. Here's the truth: you cannot outsource communication. You can delegate tasks, you can delegate execution, but you cannot delegate influence. The way you show up in meetings, the way you address conflict, the way you share wins and handle setbacks, all of it shapes how people see you, and how they see you directly impacts how much they'll follow you. So, what does relentless communication and influence look like in practice? It looks like setting a vision and repeating it until it's woven into the team's DNA. It looks like listening more than you talk and asking questions that draw out the best in others. It looks like simplifying complex ideas into stories that people can carry with them. It looks like celebrating progress, even small wins, to build momentum. And it looks like standing firm in your conviction when others hesitate, so your confidence becomes their anchor. The best engineering leaders are not remembered because they had all the answers. They're remembered because they knew how to align people around a common goal, how to communicate in a way that brought clarity, and how to influence with integrity. That's the kind of leadership that turns teams into movements, projects into breakthroughs, and vision into reality. If you want to rise above the noise, if you want your leadership to last, master communication and influence, because in the end, your ability to move people will define how far your ideas travel, how strong your teams become, and how much impact you ultimately make. Every leader looks strong when things are going right. When the deadlines are being hit, when the systems are stable, when the market is moving in your favor, anyone can stand tall in those moments, but leadership is not proven in smooth waters. Leadership is proven in chaos. It's tested when things fall apart, when pressure rises, when the future is uncertain. That's when resilience, adaptability, and ownership separate the great from the average. Without those three, you can't survive the storms of engineering leadership. With them, you become unstoppable. Resilience is the core. It's the ability to take a hit, absorb the setback, and still move forward. In engineering, setbacks are not rare. They're the norm. Systems crash. Deployments fail. Projects overrun. Leaders who panic in those moments spread panic to their teams. Leaders who collapse under pressure create environments where fear and blame thrive. But a resilient leader sets the tone. They stay calm in the chaos, steady in the storm, and signal to the team, yes, it's tough, but we'll get through this. That calmness doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means facing it head on with the belief that there's always a way forward. And that belief becomes contagious. Adaptability is what keeps you alive in a world that refuses to stay still. Technology shifts, markets change. Strategies that worked yesterday may be useless tomorrow. Too many leaders cling to what used to work, refusing to pivot because they are attached to their old playbook. But adaptability requires humility. It requires the willingness to admit that you don't have all the answers, that you need to adjust, that the world has changed, and so must you. Teams respect leaders who can pivot with purpose, not leaders who stubbornly force a broken path. Adaptability isn't weakness, it's intelligence. It's the recognition that survival belongs to those who can move with the times, not resist them. Ownership is the final piece, and it might be the hardest. Ownership means you don't point fingers when things go wrong. You don't blame the team, the market, or the circumstances. You own it. Every failure, every mistake, every setback, you take responsibility. Because as a leader, even if it wasn't your direct fault, it's still your responsibility. The opposite of ownership is excuses, and excuses kill trust. The moment your team sees you dodge responsibility, they lose respect. But when they see you own the outcome, even in failure, they double down on their commitment to you. Ownership creates trust, and trust creates loyalty. Now, put these three together and watch the transformation. A resilient leader who adapts quickly and takes ownership doesn't just survive, they thrive. They turn crises into opportunities. They turn failures into lessons. They turn doubt into momentum. Teams under that kind of leader don't crumble when challenges come, they rise. Because they know their leader won't abandon them, won't blame them, won't collapse. Instead, their leader stands with them, learns with them, and fights with them. That's when ordinary groups become extraordinary teams. But let's be clear, resilience, adaptability, and ownership are not abstract concepts. They're choices made every single day. Resilience is choosing to keep moving after a bad deployment instead of dwelling on it for weeks. Adaptability is choosing to pivot a project when market feedback proves your assumptions wrong. Ownership is choosing to say, "This is on me, and here's how we'll fix it," instead of hiding behind excuses. These choices compound. Every time you choose resilience, you get stronger. Every time you choose adaptability, you get sharper. Every time you choose ownership, you gain trust. And over time, those choices define you as a leader. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Leadership is lonely when you avoid these principles. If you lack resilience, your team sees you as fragile. If you lack adaptability, they see you as stubborn. If you lack ownership, they see you as untrustworthy. None of those qualities inspire loyalty, but when you embody resilience, adaptability, and ownership, you attract the best talent. People want to work with you because they know they'll grow under you, they know you'll protect them, and they know you'll face reality together. That's the magnetism of true leadership, and let's not ignore the personal side. Resilience keeps you from burning out. Adaptability keeps you relevant in your career. Ownership keeps your reputation intact. These aren't just qualities that make you a better leader. They make you a stronger human being. They prepare you for life beyond work, because life, just like engineering, is unpredictable. The storms will come. The question is not if, it's when. And when they do, will you be ready to lead through them? The challenge is this. Don't just talk about resilience, adaptability, and ownership. Live them, model them. Show your team what it looks like in action. When you admit a mistake publicly and take responsibility, they'll follow your lead. When you pivot strategy with confidence instead of fear, they'll trust your judgment. When you stay calm in the middle of chaos, they'll find strength in your presence. That's how culture is built, not by posters on the wall or speeches in a meeting, but by the behavior you demonstrate every single day. In the end, leadership is not about being perfect. It's about being prepared, about standing strong when others would fall, about bending without breaking, about owning what most people would avoid. Resilience, adaptability, ownership, these are not optional. They are the foundation. And if you build them into who you are, there will be no storm you cannot weather, no change you cannot navigate, no setback you cannot turn into momentum. That's what makes a leader unforgettable. That's what makes a leader worth following. Thank you. Go build that future. Lead boldly. Dream vastly. Make your mark.